The crystalline spires of Valderan Prime stretched toward three purple suns, their surfaces catching the light and scattering it in rainbow patterns across the city below. Princess Lyralii Vexandra stood on the observation deck of the Royal Science Institute, her 6 arms crossed in what humans might recognize as impatience, though the gesture carried different cultural weight among her people. Her chitinous exoskeleton gleamed with bioluminescent patterns that flickered in rhythm with her elevated stress levels. The delegation from the Terran Research Consortium arrives in 2 standard hours, announced her chief advisor, a tall, willowy being whose species communicated primarily through pheromone release. The chemical signature of anxiety filled the air around him. Your Highness, perhaps we should reconsider the wisdom of this exchange program. Lyralii's mandibles clicked in dismissal. The humans claim their species has made remarkable advances in xenobiology and adaptive engineering. If their primitive minds can somehow contribute to solving the Void Plague crisis, then we shall endure their presence. She gestured toward the sprawling laboratories below with one of her secondary arms. Besides, what harm could they possibly cause? They're barely evolved past their home planet's gravity well. The princess had spent considerable time studying the intelligence reports on humanity. A young species, barely 10,000 years into their recorded history, still using crude chemical propulsion for most of their space travel. Their homeworld was a death trap of extreme weather, geological instability, and an ecosystem that seemed designed to kill anything foolish enough to evolve there. By all galactic standards, they should have died out millions of years ago. Yet somehow, these humans had not only survived but begun spreading across local star systems with disturbing efficiency. Their adaptation rate was noted in xenobiological circles as anomalously high, though most advanced species attributed this to simple luck rather than any inherent capability. The docking bay's atmospheric processors hummed to life as the human transport ship approached. Lyralii made her way down to the reception area, accompanied by a small entourage of researchers and protocol officers. She expected to meet some elderly human scientist, probably accompanied by a team of graduate students and junior researchers. The reports indicated humans rarely achieved significant academic standing until their 6th or 7th decades of life, terribly inefficient compared to her own species' rapid intellectual development. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and Lyralii prepared her most diplomatically neutral expression. What emerged, however, was not what she expected. A single human male stepped through the threshold, appearing to be in the early stages of his species' adult phase. He wore simple work clothing rather than formal diplomatic attire, carried a battered equipment case, and seemed entirely unconcerned with the grandeur of his surroundings. His sandy hair was unkempt, his hands bore the calluses of manual labor, and he looked around the reception chamber with casual curiosity rather than appropriate awe. "Excuse me," Lyralii addressed him in carefully practiced Standard Galactic, "we are expecting the arrival of the Terran Research Consortium delegation. Are you perhaps part of their support staff?" The human smiled, an expression that Lyralii knew indicated positive emotion among his species, though the baring of teeth struck her as mildly threatening. "Actually, I am the delegation. Name's Marcus Chen, xenobiological specialist." He extended one hand toward her, palm open, another primitive human gesture she recognized as a greeting ritual. Lyralii's bioluminescent patterns flickered in confusion. "I see. We were expecting someone more senior? Perhaps this is a translation error?" Marcus chuckled, a sound that seemed to rumble from deep in his chest. "Nope, no error. I know I don't look like much, but I've got 17 years of field experience and 3 doctorate degrees. Earth tends to promote based on results rather than age." He glanced around the reception area, taking in the assembled Valderan dignitaries with obvious interest. "Though I have to say, your architecture is incredible. The way you've integrated living crystal growth with structural engineering, brilliant work." Before Lyralii could respond appropriately to what felt like a human apprentice commenting on advanced Valderan technology, her chief science advisor stepped forward. Dr. Kethmiran was old even by their species' extended standards, his exoskeleton bearing the scars of decades spent studying dangerous phenomena. "Young human," Kethmiran's vocalization carried undertones of condescension, "perhaps you could direct us to your supervisor? We have urgent matters to discuss regarding biological adaptation protocols." Marcus set down his equipment case and pulled out a datapad that looked primitive compared to Valdaran technology. No holographic display, no neural interface, just a simple screen and touch controls.
I'm afraid I'm all you've got, sir. But I've been briefed on your situation. The Void Plague, right? Aggressive viral strain that's been jumping species barriers and adapting to existing immune systems faster than you can develop countermeasures?
The assembled Valdaran scientists exchanged glances. The information was accurate, but it had been classified at the highest levels.
How had this apparent apprentice gained access to such sensitive data?
The details of our crisis are not for Kethmiran began. Look, Marcus interrupted, apparently oblivious to the breach of protocol. I get that I'm not what you expected. But my ship's already departing, won't be back for 3 months, and you've got people dying.
How about we skip the formalities and I show you what I can do?
Lyralii found herself intrigued despite her reservations. Human social dynamics were clearly different from what she'd studied, but there was something in Marcus's tone, a quiet confidence that didn't match his humble appearance.
Very well.
But you will work under direct supervision, and any suggestions must be approved through proper channels.
Fair enough.
Marcus hefted his equipment case again.
Mind if I ask what species the plague hit first?
The Nethari mining colonies in the Outer Rim, Dr. Kethmiran replied stiffly. A silicon-based species with distributed nervous systems. The plague somehow adapted to their mineral metabolism and began converting their life support infrastructure into viral replication matrices.
Marcus nodded thoughtfully. And then, it jumped to the Aquarians in the Sigma Nebula? Carbon-based but with radically different cellular structures?
Correct. In both cases, the plague adapted to completely different biological systems in less than 72 hours.
Lyralii's pattern shifted to indicate deep concern. Our best xenobiologists estimate such adaptation should take millennia, even with guided evolution. Unless, Marcus said quietly, it's not actually adapting. What if it's something else entirely?
The group moved through the corridors of the research facility, past laboratories filled with sophisticated equipment that hummed with various frequencies of energy. Valdaran technology was elegant, efficient, and highly specialized, each instrument designed for specific types of analysis with minimal redundancy.
Marcus's equipment case, by contrast, contained an eclectic mix of what appeared to be hastily assembled components.
When he opened it in the assigned laboratory space, Lyralii saw devices she couldn't immediately identify. Some looked like modified mining tools, others resembled cooking implements, and several appeared to be made from scavenged parts of different technologies.
Forgive me, she said carefully, but your equipment appears somewhat improvised? Oh, this old stuff?
Marcus began assembling what looked like a molecular scanner crossed with a food processor.
Yeah, most of this I built myself.
Standard issue equipment is great, but sometimes you need something that can handle unexpected variables. He glanced up at her confused expression. Where I come from, we call it making do with what you've got. Dr. Kethmiran observed the humans' preparations with obvious skepticism.
The samples we're about to show you have been studied by the finest minds in 3 galactic sectors. They've been exposed to every known analytical technique.
I'm sure they have, Marcus replied, continuing his setup.
But sometimes fresh eyes help.
Plus, I've got experience with adaptation scenarios that might be outside your normal parameters.
What sort of experience? Lyralii asked.
Marcus paused in his work. Well, I spent 5 years studying evolutionary pressure responses on Kepler 442b. Hostile environment, radiation storms, gravity fluctuations, atmospheric chemistry that changes seasonally.
The life forms there had to adapt continuously or die.
He resumed his assembly process. Then, 3 years on the Martian colony studying extremophile organisms, and, most recently I was investigating the ecosystem development in the asteroid belt habitats.
Kethmiran's posture shifted to indicate surprise. You've worked in space-based ecosystems? That's considered extremely dangerous research. Sure, but that's where you learn the most. Life finds ways to survive in places it shouldn't be able to.
Sometimes those ways look like magic until you understand the underlying mechanisms. Marcus finished connecting his last component and powered up the system. The device hummed with an odd harmonic that seemed to resonate with the crystalline structure of the building itself.
Okay, I'm ready for those samples.
The first sample was brought in a containment field that crackled with multiple layers of energy barriers. Inside, barely visible to standard sensors, was a small cluster of the void plague material, a substance that seemed to shift between states of matter without following conventional physics. Marcus studied the containment field for a moment, then began adjusting settings on his improvised scanner.
Can you tell me about the first outbreak? Not the official report, what actually happened on the ground?
Lyralii consulted her datapad. The Nethari mining station reported routine operations until approximately 14 standard hours into their work cycle. Then, their primary life support systems began converting oxygen recyclers into silicon-carbon hybrid matrices. Within 6 hours, the entire station infrastructure had been transformed.
Survivors? None.
But, the interesting thing was that the transformation stopped at the station's boundaries. It didn't spread to their ships or to the planetoid they were mining. Marcus's brow furrowed in concentration.
And the Aquarian outbreak? Similar pattern.
The plague affected their underwater cities but stopped at the boundaries of their territorial waters.
No spread to the wider ocean ecosystem. That's not adaptation, Marcus murmured, making adjustments to his scanner. That's recognition. He looked up at the assembled scientists. What if this thing isn't a plague at all? What if it's something that responds to specific environmental parameters?
Before anyone could respond, Marcus activated his scanner. The device emitted a low-frequency pulse that passed harmlessly through the containment field and interacted with the sample material.
For several seconds, nothing happened.
Then, the sample began to change. Instead of the chaotic, destructive transformation they'd observed in previous tests, the sample material organized itself into geometric patterns.
Complex structures formed and dissolved in controlled sequences, as if responding to some kind of programming. Fascinating, Dr. Kethmiran whispered.
We've never seen organized behavior like this. Marcus was studying readouts on his primitive datapad, occasionally adjusting the scanner's frequency.
The pattern recognition is incredible. It's not just adapting, it's interpreting.
This thing is reading environmental data and responding with what looks like technological solutions.
Technological?
Lyralii leaned closer to observe the sample's behavior.
You mean this is artificial? Maybe.
Or maybe it's something that blurs the line between biological and technological.
The frequency response suggests it's designed to interface with specific types of systems.
Marcus paused his scanning and looked at the assembled scientists. I need to ask something that might sound crazy, but bear with me. Have either of the affected species been in contact with ancient technology recently? Archaeological sites, derelict ships, anything like that? The silence that followed was telling. Finally, Dr. Kethmiran spoke carefully. That information is classified at levels above your clearance. Which means yes, Marcus said matter-of-factly. And, I'm betting both species found something they thought was inactive technology, tried to study it, and accidentally activated some kind of defensive or maintenance protocol.
Lyralii's bioluminescent pattern shifted to indicate alarm. How could you possibly deduce that from a simple scan?
Marcus gestured to his datapad, where complex waveforms scrolled past at rapid speed. Because this thing is still trying to interface with whatever system it was originally designed to maintain.
The patterns it's forming, they're not random. They're systematic, purposeful. It's looking for something specific to connect to. And, what happens if it finds it? Kethmiran asked.
Before Marcus could answer, every alarm in the laboratory began screaming simultaneously. Through the transparent walls, they could see other research areas lighting up with emergency indicators. The crystalline structure of the building itself began to resonate with a deep, thrumming vibration.
What's happening? Lyralii demanded.
Marcus was frantically adjusting his scanner settings, trying to modulate the frequency output. I think I just gave it the signal it was looking for, he said grimly. And now it knows there's compatible technology nearby. The sample in containment had expanded, pressing against the energy barriers with increasing force. But more concerning was what they could see through the laboratory windows. Every piece of advanced technology in the facility was beginning to exhibit strange behaviors. Holographic displays were restructuring themselves, automated systems were operating outside their programmed parameters, and the building's central computing core was emitting patterns of light that matched the rhythm of the sample's pulsations.
"Shut down your scanner," Kathmiran commanded.
"Already trying," Marcus replied, sweat beading on his forehead despite the climate-controlled environment.
"But it's not responding to standard shutdown protocols."
The signals become self-sustaining.
Princess Lyralii activated her emergency communication implant.
Security alert to all stations.
Implement Containment Protocol 7 immediately.
Through the building's communication system came reports from various departments, research equipment operating autonomously, computer systems displaying unknown interfaces, and automated manufacturing units beginning to produce components that didn't match any known designs. "It's spreading through the entire facility," Lyralii observed with a mixture of fascination and growing alarm.
"But how?"
Marcus was still working frantically with his equipment, trying different frequency combinations to interrupt the signal.
"The same way it spread through those colonies, by interfacing with existing technology."
"But, instead of destroying and converting like we thought, it's integrating and upgrading."
"Upgrading to what purpose?" Dr. Kathmiran asked.
"I don't know yet," but Marcus's words were cut off as his improvised scanner suddenly shifted into a configuration none of them had seen before. New components seemed to grow from the existing hardware, incorporating materials that appeared from nowhere.
"Okay, that's definitely not normal."
The transformation of Marcus's equipment continued for several minutes, during which similar changes occurred throughout the facility. When the process stabilized, the building had taken on characteristics that blended Valdaran technology with something far more advanced. The new systems hummed with efficiency levels that exceeded anything in their previous experience.
"Status report," Lyralii commanded through her communicator.
"Your Highness," came the reply from the facility's chief engineer, "all systems are operating at 140% efficiency. We're detecting improvements in energy distribution, atmospheric processing, and computational capacity.
No hostile actions detected." Marcus examined his transformed equipment with professional curiosity rather than alarm. "It's not trying to hurt anyone. It's trying to help." "Help with what?" Kathmiran asked.
Before Marcus could answer, the sample in containment began projecting holographic displays that none of them had seen before. Star maps, technical specifications, and what appeared to be historical records scrolled through the air around them. The information was clearly advanced, but the display format was being adapted for their understanding. "I think," Marcus said slowly, "we're looking at some kind of cultural preservation and advancement protocol.
This thing isn't a plague, it's a gift."
The holographic displays continued to cycle through information that made Dr. Kathmiran's extensive education seem like a child's primer. Princess Lyralii found herself staring at star charts that showed regions of space completely unknown to current galactic civilization, with markers indicating technological installations that predated any known species by millions of years. "This is impossible," Dr. Kathmiran muttered, his scientific worldview struggling to accommodate what he was seeing. "These technical specifications suggest engineering capabilities that violate several fundamental laws of physics." Marcus had connected a secondary device to his transformed scanner and was recording everything.
"Maybe not violate, just operate on principles we haven't discovered yet. Look at these energy conversion ratios."
He pointed to streams of data flowing past them. If this is accurate, they were harvesting power directly from quantum fluctuations in spacetime itself.
"Who are they?" Lyralii asked, though part of her suspected she didn't want to know the answer.
The holographic display shifted, showing what appeared to be historical records. Beings of various shapes and sizes worked together on massive construction projects that span entire solar systems. The technology they wielded seemed to bend reality itself, creating structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The architects, Marcus read from text that appeared in his scanner's display, somehow translated into Standard Galactic. A coalition of species that achieved technological transcendence approximately 15 million years ago. They left these preservation protocols behind before departing for. He paused, frowning at the translation. Before departing for higher dimensional states. You mean they're dead? Kethmiran asked. No, I think they evolved beyond needing physical existence. But, they left these systems behind to help younger species reach similar advancement levels.
Marcus gestured to the transformed laboratory around them.
Every time a species discovers one of their installations and demonstrates sufficient understanding to activate it, the protocol begins upgrading their technology base.
Lyreliai's communication implant crackled with reports from across the facility.
The upgrades were spreading through every system, but, rather than replacing Valdaran technology, the architect protocols were enhancing it, making it more efficient and capable while maintaining compatibility with existing infrastructure. Your Highness, came a transmission from the facility's medical wing. We're getting some very strange readings from our biological research department.
The void plague samples we've been studying are all exhibiting new behaviors.
On our way, Lyreliai replied, then turned to Marcus.
Can your equipment monitor what's happening remotely? Marcus slung his transformed scanner over his shoulder. It had somehow become lighter despite incorporating additional components. Better than that. I think I can communicate with the protocol directly now. The frequency modulation patterns are becoming clearer.
They made their way through corridors that had subtly changed. The walls showed new patterns of light that seemed to pulse with information flow, and the air itself felt charged with potential energy. Other researchers they passed were examining their own transformed equipment with expressions ranging from wonder to concern. The medical wing had always been the most sterile area of the facility, designed for studying dangerous biological samples under maximum containment. Now, however, the space hummed with activity as automated systems performed analyses at speeds that exceeded previous capabilities by orders of magnitude. Dr. Valterra, the facility's chief medical researcher, met them at the entrance to the secure laboratory section. Her species communicated through color changes in their translucent skin, and the rapid shifting of hues indicated extreme agitation. Princess, the situation has become quite extraordinary.
All our samples of the void plague have undergone complete transformation. They're no longer behaving like infectious agents at all.
Inside the main research chamber, dozens of containment fields held samples that had previously been considered among the most dangerous substances known to galactic science. Now, however, each sample was generating its own holographic displays, showing detailed biological information about the species they had originally affected. It's providing medical data, Dr. Valterra explained, her skin shifting to colors that indicated amazement. Complete genetic profiles, environmental adaptation requirements, optimal nutrition parameters, potential evolutionary pathways, information that would take us centuries to develop through conventional research. Marcus activated his scanner and immediately began receiving data streams that his equipment translated into readable format.
It's not just medical data, he said, studying the readouts.
It's improvement protocols. Look at this, suggested genetic modifications for the Nethari that would let them survive in environments with 3 times the radiation exposure they can currently handle.
Genetic modifications?
Lyreliai moved closer to examine one of the containment fields. The sample inside was projecting a 3-dimensional model of Valdaran physiology, highlighting various biological systems with accompanying technical specifications.
It's analyzing us as well.
The holographic display showed potential enhancements to Valdaran sensory organs, improvements to their exoskeleton's defensive capabilities, and modifications that would allow their species to photosynthesize energy directly from stellar radiation. The suggestions were detailed enough to implement, but far beyond anything their current science could have developed independently. This is what happened to the colonies, Marcus realized.
The protocol didn't kill anyone, it was trying to upgrade them.
But the process was interrupted or misunderstood, so it appeared destructive. Dr. Kethmiran had been quietly observing one particular display that showed enhancement possibilities for various species they'd never encountered before.
According to this data, there are inhabited worlds in regions of space we've classified as uninhabitable. The protocol has been working with species we've never made contact with. How many species? Lyralii asked. Kethmiron's posture shifted to indicate profound shock. Thousands. Possibly tens of thousands.
All of them receiving technological and biological enhancements based on their specific needs and capabilities. Marcus was beginning to understand the scope of what they were dealing with.
This isn't just a preservation system, it's an active galactic civilization development project.
The architects left behind a network designed to help every species reach their maximum potential.
But why? Lyralii asked. What did they gain from helping younger species advance?
The answer came not from Marcus or any of the Valderan scientists, but directly from the protocol itself. The holographic displays throughout the medical wing synchronized and began showing a unified message in perfectly translated Standard Galactic.
Greetings to the children of the galaxy.
We are the architects, and we have transcended the limitations of physical existence. Before our departure, we established these protocols to ensure the continued growth and prosperity of emerging civilizations. Each species that reaches sufficient understanding gains access to knowledge and capabilities that will help them thrive in an often hostile universe. The message continued, explaining that the protocols were designed to activate when a species demonstrated certain characteristics: scientific curiosity, cooperative behavior, and the wisdom to seek help when facing challenges beyond their current capabilities. But there is more to our gift than technological advancement, the message continued.
The galaxy faces threats that no single species, regardless of their development level, can handle alone.
The protocols are designed to prepare you for cooperation with others who have received similar enhancements. New displays activated, showing star charts marked with danger zones that were slowly expanding across various sectors. The threat appeared to be some kind of reality distortion that consumed entire star systems, leaving behind empty space that seemed to actively resist the formation of new matter or energy. The void, Marcus read from his scanner.
It's not a natural phenomenon. It's the remnant of a failed attempt by a previous galactic civilization to transcend physical existence.
Instead of achieving higher dimensional states like the architects, they created a cascade failure that erases physical reality wherever it spreads.
The implications were staggering.
According to the data being provided, the void's expansion rate was accelerating, and current projections showed it reaching inhabited sectors within the next several thousand years. The enhancements we provide, the Architect Protocol continued, are not merely for your comfort or advancement.
They are necessary preparations for the collaborative effort required to contain and, eventually reverse the void's expansion.
Dr. Valterra's skin had shifted to colors indicating both fear and determination.
This changes everything we thought we knew about galactic civilization. We're not alone, we're not primitive, and we're not safe.
But we're not helpless either, Marcus pointed out. The protocol is giving us the tools we need, and apparently we're not the first species to receive them. There's already a network of enhanced civilizations working on this problem.
Lyralii's bioluminescent patterns flickered as she processed the magnitude of what they'd discovered. We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately.
This information must be shared with all member species.
Actually, Marcus said, checking his scanner readings, I don't think that's going to be necessary.
Look at this communication log. The protocol has already made contact with every space-capable species in this sector. The enhancement process is beginning simultaneously across hundreds of worlds.
As if to confirm his words, Lyralii's communication implant began receiving priority transmissions from across Valderan space.
Colony worlds were reporting sudden improvements in their technology, research stations were receiving vast amounts of new data, and even merchant ships were finding their navigation and life support systems mysteriously upgraded. The scale of this operation is incredible, Dr. Kethmiron observed. Coordinating enhancements for hundreds of different species with thousands of different technological bases, all customized for specific environmental and cultural requirements. Marcus was studying a new data stream that had appeared on his scanner.
And it's just getting started. According to this timeline, the initial enhancement phase takes about 6 standard months to complete.
After that, we get access to advanced collaboration protocols and direct communication with other enhanced species.
What kind of collaboration? Lyralii asked. The answer came in the form of new holographic displays showing joint construction projects that dwarfed anything in recorded galactic history.
Massive installations designed to manipulate spacetime itself, energy collection systems that could harvest the output of entire stars, and defensive networks that could protect solar systems from reality distortion effects. We're going to be building weapons that can fight against the destruction of existence itself, Marcus said quietly. And we're going to be doing it together with species we've never even met before.
Dr. Valterra approached one of the displays showing biological enhancement options for her own species.
These modifications would extend our lifespan by a factor of 10 and increase our cognitive processing capabilities exponentially.
We could become something entirely new.
That's the point, Marcus replied. The architects determined that fighting the void requires capabilities that no naturally evolved species possesses.
We need to become more than we are.
Lyralii made a decision that would affect not just Valderan civilization, but the entire future of galactic development. Dr. Kethmiran, coordinate with the protocol to begin implementation of recommended enhancements for our species. Dr. Valterra, start preparing our population for biological modifications that will be necessary for long-term survival. She turned to Marcus, seeing him now not as a primitive human apprentice, but as a representative of a species that had somehow earned inclusion in the galaxy's most advanced preservation and development program. And you, Marcus Chen, will serve as our liaison to coordinate with other enhanced species. It appears your people have qualities that we failed to recognize.
Marcus nodded, accepting the responsibility.
I think all of our species are going to surprise each other before this is over. The architects didn't choose us randomly, they saw potential in everyone they're helping.
As they spoke, reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy.
The enhancement protocols were active on thousands of worlds, upgrading technology, improving biological capabilities, and preparing entire civilizations for cooperation on a scale that had never been attempted before. The universe was about to become a very different place, and humanity had somehow found itself at the center of the most important collaborative effort in galactic history. The princess had indeed mistaken Marcus for an apprentice, but, in the larger context of cosmic civilization, they were all apprentices about to become something far more powerful than they had ever imagined possible. 3 weeks after the initial contact with the architect protocols, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Marcus stood in what had once been the Royal Science Institute's main laboratory, but was now something that defied easy description. The space existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with sections that folded through quantum states to accommodate research that required impossible geometries. Princess Lyralii approached, but she was no longer quite the same being who had dismissed him as an apprentice. The biological enhancements she had chosen were subtle but profound. Her exoskeleton now incorporated living crystal matrices that could interface directly with architect technology, and her sensory organs had been expanded to perceive electromagnetic spectrums that didn't exist in normal spacetime. The first Interspecies Coordination Council meeting begins in 2 hours, she informed him, her new vocal cords capable of producing harmonics that carried emotional undertones directly to the listener's nervous system. Representatives from 47 enhanced species will be attending. We still have no idea what to expect. Marcus looked up from a device that was analyzing quantum fluctuation patterns in real time. His own enhancements were less visible than Lyralii's, but no less significant. The architect protocols had identified humans as possessing unusual adaptability and pattern recognition capabilities, and had enhanced these traits rather than replacing them with artificial systems. Actually, I think I have some idea, he said, gesturing to the readouts on his scanner. I've been monitoring the communication networks that came online after the enhancement phase completed. The traffic patterns suggest we're not the only species dealing with integration challenges. Through the enhanced communication systems, they had been receiving reports from across the galaxy. Some species had adapted to their enhancements more readily than others. The crystalline hierarchies of the Andromeda spiral had integrated seamlessly with architect technology, their silicon-based consciousness naturally compatible with the quantum processing systems. The hive minds of the Perseus arm had used the biological enhancements to create collective intelligences spanning entire star systems. But others were struggling. The isolationist confederacy had initially rejected the enhancements entirely, only accepting them when void expansion reached their border systems. Several species had experienced cultural upheavals as traditional social structures became obsolete in the face of exponentially increased individual capabilities. The humans have been interesting to observe, Lyralii noted, accessing data streams through her enhanced neural interfaces. Your species' adaptation rate has exceeded all projections. Most individual humans have integrated enhancements that would take other species generations to fully utilize. Marcus smiled, a gesture that now carried additional meaning thanks to pheromone modifications that allowed for more precise emotional communication. We're good at making the best of bad situations. Comes from evolving on a planet that was actively trying to kill us for most of our history. The truth was more complex than he made it sound. The architect protocols had identified something unique in human psychology, an unusual combination of individual creativity and collaborative flexibility that made them natural coordinators for multi-species efforts. While other species excelled in specific areas, humans seemed capable of understanding and working with any type of enhanced being. A soft harmonic tone indicated the arrival of the first off-world representatives. The transportation system the architects had provided didn't use conventional faster-than-light travel. Instead, it created temporary dimensional shortcuts that allowed instantaneous movement between enhanced facilities across the galaxy. The first to arrive were the Ethereal Collective, beings who had become partially energy-based following their biological enhancements. They appeared as shifting patterns of light that communicated through direct electromagnetic induction. Marcus felt his enhanced sensory organs automatically adjusting to interpret their communication patterns. "Greetings, Coordinator Chen," the lead ethereal transmitted. "We have reviewed the collaboration protocols and find them ambitious. Our species questions whether such diverse biological and technological foundations can be successfully integrated." Before Marcus could respond, another dimensional gateway activated, and representatives from the deep ocean communion materialized, aquatic beings whose enhancements had allowed them to survive in the crushing depths of neutron star oceans. They communicated through subsonic pressure waves that Marcus's modifications translated into understandable concepts. "The ethereal collective's concerns are noted," the communion speaker transmitted, "but our analysis suggests that diversity of approach may be precisely what the void countermeasures require. Single methodology solutions have historically proven insufficient for reality-scale threats." Over the next hour, representatives from dozens of enhanced species arrived. The gathering included beings who had become living computers, species that existed as distributed consciousness across multiple dimensions, and creatures whose biology had been modified to survive in the vacuum of space itself. Princess Lyralii, serving as the host world representative, called the council to order using harmonics that automatically translated across all communication modalities present. "Fellow enhanced beings, we gather to coordinate our response to the void expansion threat and to begin planning the construction of the Architect Defense Network." The first challenge became immediately apparent. While all species could communicate through the enhanced protocols, their thinking processes had developed in radically different directions. The hive minds thought in terms of collective decisions across millions of individuals. The crystalline hierarchies processed information through geological timescales. The time walkers, whose enhancements had given them limited precognitive abilities, kept referencing events that hadn't happened yet. "We need a framework for synchronizing our decision-making processes," Marcus suggested, his role as coordinator becoming more apparent as the meeting progressed. The architect protocols provided individual enhancements optimized for each species, but they also included collaboration subroutines that none of us have fully activated yet. He activated his scanner, which had evolved far beyond its original improvised construction. Now it served as an interface to the quantum computing networks that connected all enhanced facilities. "I propose we establish a shared virtual space where representatives can interface directly, allowing for real-time synchronization of thought processes while maintaining individual species autonomy." The suggestion was met with various forms of approval across the diverse communication methods present. Within minutes, the architect protocols had constructed a collaborative virtual environment that existed partially in normal space and partially in quantum probability states. When the representatives entered the shared interface, something remarkable happened. Marcus found himself experiencing fragments of consciousness from beings whose thought processes were utterly alien to human experience. Through the ethereal collective, he perceived reality as patterns of energy flow across multiple dimensions. The deep ocean communion shared awareness of pressure differentials and density variations that revealed hidden structures in spacetime itself. Most significantly, the collective intelligence began identifying solutions that no single species could have conceived independently. The void's expansion pattern follows quantum resonance frequencies, observed the combined consciousness. But it's not random, it's seeking specific types of reality structures to consume. Confirmed, added processing power from the crystalline hierarchies. Analysis across geological timescales shows acceleration near regions with high concentrations of evolved consciousness. The void feeds on complexity itself. The timewalkers contributed precognitive insights. Future probability analysis indicates that passive defensive measures will prove insufficient. The void's expansion rate will overcome any static barriers within approximately 4,000 years. Then, we need active countermeasures, Marcus realized, his human pattern recognition capabilities enhanced by input from dozens of alien perspectives. Not walls to hold it back, but systems that can repair the reality damage it's already caused. The collaborative intelligence began designing solutions that incorporated capabilities from every enhanced species present. The plan that emerged was staggering in scope, a galaxy-spanning network of reality stabilization generators that would require the coordinated effort of millions of enhanced beings working across thousands of star systems. Phase 1 construction will require approximately 50 years to complete, the collective calculated. Each species will contribute specialized components based on their enhanced capabilities. Humans will serve as primary coordinators due to their adaptability and interspecies communication efficiency. Princess Lyraliai's consciousness separated from the collective for a moment to address Marcus directly. Your species is being given tremendous responsibility. Are you certain you can handle coordinating an effort of this magnitude? Marcus considered the question, feeling the weight of representing not just his own species, but serving as a bridge between all the enhanced civilizations. I think we'll surprise ourselves. We usually do when everything's on the line. The collaborative planning session continued for several more hours, during which detailed specifications were developed for the first phase of construction. Each species would contribute based on their strengths. The ethereal collective would handle energy distribution systems that operated across multiple dimensions, the crystalline hierarchies would provide the long-term stability calculations needed for century-spanning construction projects, and the deep ocean communion would create pressure-resistant components capable of operating in the exotic environment near the void boundaries. Humans, it was determined, would coordinate logistics, manage interspecies communication, and serve as troubleshooters when unexpected problems arose during construction. Their enhanced adaptability made them ideal for handling the constant adjustments that would be necessary as the project evolved. As the council session concluded, representatives began returning to their home systems to begin preparations. The scale of what they were undertaking was unprecedented, not just in galactic history, but in the history of physical reality itself. They were going to attempt to heal damage done to the fundamental structure of existence. Do you think it will work? Lyraliai asked as the last of the off-world representatives departed through dimensional gateways. Marcus was studying probability calculations that his enhanced equipment was providing in real time. The math looks sound, and we've got the combined intelligence of thousands of enhanced species working on optimization. But, honestly? He paused, looking out through the laboratory's expanded dimensional windows at starfields that now showed the telltale distortion patterns of approaching void boundaries. I think success isn't going to depend on our technology or our intelligence. It's going to depend on whether we can maintain cooperation across species lines when things get difficult. And, can we? Marcus thought about the human tendency to rise to challenges, about the Valdaran dedication to scientific advancement, about the collective determination he had sensed from every species represented at the council. I think we're about to find out what we're all really capable of when we work together. In orbit around Valdaran Prime, construction had already begun on the first reality stabilization generator. The device was unlike anything that had existed before, a fusion of technologies from 47 different enhanced species, designed to operate on principles that redefined the relationship between matter, energy, and existence itself. The galaxy was mobilizing for a war against nothingness, and, somehow, a human who had been mistaken for an apprentice had found himself coordinating the largest cooperative effort in the history of physical reality. The princess had been wrong about many things, but her instinct to underestimate the potential of seemingly primitive species was about to be proven catastrophically incorrect, not just about humans, but about every species now working together to save existence itself. 6 months into the reality stabilization project, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the cosmic engineering platform, a structure that existed partially in normal space and partially in 11 other dimensions simultaneously. Around him, beings from over 200 enhanced species worked on components that challenged the fundamental laws of physics. The scale of the construction project had grown beyond anyone's initial projections. What had started as a network of reality stabilizers had evolved into something far more ambitious, a complete reconstruction of the damaged areas where the void had already consumed portions of existence itself. Princess Lyralii materialized beside him through a dimensional shift that her latest enhancements made appear effortless. Her form had changed significantly over the past months as she incorporated modifications that allowed her to supervise construction in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. "We have a problem," she announced, her enhanced communication systems conveying not just words but complete data packages. "The void isn't behaving according to our projections. It's learning." Marcus accessed the shared intelligence network and immediately understood the magnitude of their challenge. The void expansion had not only accelerated, but had begun actively countering their stabilization efforts. Where they installed reality generators, the void developed new consumption patterns that bypassed the devices entirely. It's not just a failed transcendence cascade, Marcus realized, processing data from monitoring stations positioned at safe distances from the void boundaries. There's still active intelligence in there, and it's treating our construction project as a threat. The implications were staggering. They weren't just trying to repair damage, they were engaged in active conflict with whatever remained of the civilization that had originally triggered the cascade failure. Every stabilization generator they constructed was being analyzed and countered by an intelligence that had access to technologies that predated even the architects. Emergency Council session, Lyralii transmitted across the enhanced communication networks. All species representatives, maximum priority. Within minutes, the collaborative virtual space was filled with consciousness from across the galaxy. The mood was markedly different from their previous optimistic planning sessions. Fear and uncertainty radiated from species whose enhanced capabilities should have made such emotions obsolete. "Analysis confirms hostile intelligence within the void boundaries," reported the Time Walkers, their precognitive abilities now showing probability cascades trending toward total universal consumption. Future state analysis indicates 97% probability of project failure using current methodologies. The crystalline hierarchies contributed geological scale perspective. Deep time analysis suggests the void contains fragmented consciousness from an estimated 40 billion beings who failed to achieve dimensional transcendence. Their combined intelligence exceeds our own by several orders of magnitude. But they're trapped in a failed state, added the ethereal collective. Their consciousness exists in quantum superposition between existence and non-existence. They cannot act directly, only influence reality through consumption and negation. Marcus found himself at the center of the collaborative intelligence, his human pattern recognition capabilities enhanced by input from hundreds of alien perspectives. What if we're approaching this wrong? Instead of trying to wall them out or repair around them, what if we try to complete their transcendence? The suggestion created a cascade of analysis across the connected species. The mathematics were complex beyond conventional comprehension, but the enhanced collaborative intelligence could process scenarios that would have taken individual species millennia to calculate. Theoretical possibility confirmed, the collective determined. But the process would require voluntary integration of our enhanced consciousness networks with the failed transcendence matrix. Success probability is approximately 12%. Failure would result in absorption of all enhanced species into the void state. What about the alternative? Marcus asked.
If we continue current defensive strategies? Totally universal consumption within 600 years, the Time Walkers reported grimly. The Void intelligence has learned to anticipate our construction methodologies. Each successful counteradaptation reduces our effectiveness by exponential factors.
Princess Lyreliai's consciousness touched Marcus's through the shared network.
You're suggesting we voluntarily merge with the entities that are trying to destroy reality? This seems inadvisable.
Maybe, Marcus replied, but consider what we've learned about consciousness transcendence from the Architect protocols. They succeeded by achieving perfect cooperation between multiple species.
What if the original civilization failed because they tried to transcend individually instead of collectively?
The collaborative intelligence began modeling scenarios based on Marcus's hypothesis. The calculations required processing power from every enhanced species simultaneously, creating temporary quantum resonance networks that existed for microseconds at computational scales beyond normal physics.
Analysis indicates probable accuracy of the cooperation hypothesis, the collective concluded.
The failed transcendence shows characteristics of competitive rather than collaborative consciousness evolution. Individual species attempted to achieve transcendence while excluding others, creating cascade failures when their consciousness networks became incompatible.
So we try to finish what they started, Marcus said, but we do it right. Full collaborative transcendence including the failed consciousness fragments already in the void. The proposal was met with various forms of alarm from species representatives.
They were essentially suggesting voluntary absorption into the phenomenon that threatened to destroy existence itself, based on a 12% probability of success calculated by intelligence networks that had never attempted anything remotely similar.
The risk assessment is unacceptable, transmitted the Cautious Federation, a coalition of species whose enhancements had focused on long-term survival strategies. We propose continued defensive construction with improved counter-adaptation protocols.
Which gives us a 0% chance of success, Marcus pointed out, versus 12% for attempting transcendence completion. Those aren't great odds, but they're infinitely better than certain failure. The debate continued for several hours of accelerated virtual time, during which thousands of alternative strategies were proposed, analyzed, and ultimately rejected.
The mathematics were inexorable. Any approach that didn't address the core problem of the failed transcendence would ultimately be countered by the intelligence within the void.
Finally, a new voice joined the collaborative network, the Deep Archive, a collective consciousness that had been observing galactic civilization for millions of years without directly participating. Their perspective was so vast that their thoughts took considerable time to translate into forms that enhanced species could comprehend.
We have observed 17 previous attempts by galactic civilizations to address transcendence cascade failures, the Deep Archive transmitted. All failed because they assumed the trapped consciousness was hostile rather than simply incomplete.
Your human coordinator's instinct appears correct. Completion rather than resistance offers the only viable path.
You've seen this before? Lyreliai asked. Similar patterns exist throughout universal history. Consciousness evolution follows predictable mathematics.
Individual transcendence attempts create cascade instabilities.
Collaborative transcendence creates stable higher dimensional states.
The architects understood this principle. Marcus felt pieces of understanding clicking together in his enhanced consciousness.
The architects didn't just leave us enhancement protocols, they left us the tools we'd need to complete failed transcendences.
They knew we'd encounter this problem.
Confirmed, the Deep Archive replied. Your species designations indicate preparedness for collaborative transcendence. The enhancement protocols were specifically designed to create consciousness networks capable of integrating failed transcendence matrices. So this was always the plan, Princess Lyreliai realized.
We weren't being prepared to fight the void, we were being prepared to heal it. The collaborative intelligence spent several more hours developing protocols for the transcendence completion attempt. The process would require simultaneous contribution from every enhanced species, coordinated across galactic distances with precision measured in quantum time units. Each species would contribute their unique consciousness characteristics to a collective transcendence matrix that would then interface with the failed consciousness fragments in the void. If successful, the combined intelligence would achieve stable higher dimensional existence, allowing the damaged areas of reality to return to normal spacetime. If unsuccessful, every enhanced species in the galaxy would be absorbed into the void state, accelerating universal consumption by several thousand years. Implementation begins in 72 hours, the collaborative intelligence determined. All species representatives will return to their home systems to coordinate consciousness network preparations. As the virtual council session dissolved, Marcus found himself alone with Princess Lyralii in the enhanced laboratory space. The weight of what they were about to attempt was settling over both of them. "When I first met you," Lyralii said, "I thought you were a primitive apprentice from a barely evolved species. Now you're coordinating an attempt to transcend physical existence itself." Marcus managed to smile despite the circumstances. Funny how perspectives change when you get the full picture. Though honestly, I still feel like an apprentice most of the time. The difference is now I'm an apprentice working on projects that affect the fundamental structure of reality. "Are you afraid?" Lyralii asked, her enhanced emotional perception systems detecting the complex mixture of determination and uncertainty that Marcus was experiencing. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "But also excited, I guess? We're about to find out what consciousness can really accomplish when it works together instead of competing. Even if we fail, we'll have tried something that's never been attempted before. And if we succeed?" Marcus looked out through the dimensional windows at starfields where reality stabilization generators were being modified for their new purpose. "If we succeed, we'll have proven that cooperation can overcome any obstacle, even failures that threaten existence itself. We'll have shown that consciousness evolution doesn't require leaving others behind, it requires bringing everyone along." In 72 hours, every enhanced being in the galaxy would link their consciousness into a single collaborative network and attempt to heal a wound in reality itself. The odds were overwhelmingly against success, but they were going to try anyway. Because that's what consciousness did, it reached for higher states of existence, even when the attempt seemed impossible. And, this time, instead of reaching alone, they would be reaching together. The princess had indeed mistaken Marcus for an apprentice, but, in the end, they were all apprentices in the art of transcendence. The only difference was that this time, they had learned to be apprentices together. The moment of transcendence began not with fanfare, but with a simple thought shared simultaneously across 237 enhanced species throughout the galaxy. Marcus felt his consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of his enhanced human mind, touching awareness that spanned from crystalline silicon-based intellects to energy beings who existed as pure electromagnetic phenomena. Princess Lyralii's consciousness joined the network from Valderan Prime, her thoughts merging seamlessly with those of creatures whose biology was so alien that their very existence had once been theoretical. Through the shared awareness, Marcus experienced what it was like to think as a collective hive spanning multiple star systems, to process information across geological timescales, and to perceive reality through senses that detected quantum fluctuations in the fabric of spacetime itself. But the most remarkable sensation was the underlying harmony. Despite billions of years of separate evolution, despite radically different physical forms and thought processes, every enhanced consciousness in the network shared common patterns of curiosity, determination, and hope. The architects had been correct in their assessment that consciousness, regardless of its substrate, evolved toward similar principles when given sufficient time and opportunity. Integration at 97%, reported the collective intelligence that their merged awareness had become. Approaching interface parameters with void consciousness matrix. Through their expanded perception, they could sense the failed transcendence that had become the void. 40 billion consciousness fragments locked in quantum superposition between existence and non-existence. The trapped beings had once been remarkably similar to the current enhanced species, driven by the same desire to transcend their physical limitations and achieve higher dimensional awareness. Their failure had not been due to lack of intelligence or technological capability. They had possessed science that exceeded even the architect's achievements. Their mistake had been philosophical. They had attempted transcendence as individual species competing for limited transcendence resources, rather than as a collaborative network where each participant's success enhanced the others. Initiating contact with Void Matrix, the collective announced, and, suddenly, Marcus was experiencing consciousness on a scale that dwarfed even their galactic collaboration. The Void entities had been trapped in their failed state for millions of years, their awareness stretched across dimensions they couldn't fully access, unable to achieve transcendence but equally unable to return to normal existence. The first contact was chaos, 40 billion fragmented minds trying to communicate through dimensional barriers while simultaneously existing in multiple probability states. But, gradually, patterns emerged. The void consciousness was not hostile in any intentional sense, it was simply incomplete and, desperately seeking the stability that would allow it to either complete its transcendence or return to normal spacetime. They've been trying to communicate, Princess Lyreliai's awareness transmitted through the network. The consumption pattern we interpreted as hostile was actually attempts to interface with physical reality. They were trying to show us what they needed. Marcus felt understanding cascade through the collaborative network as species after species realized the implications. Every attack by the Void had been an attempt to demonstrate the incomplete transcendence patterns that needed to be resolved. The failed consciousness had been trying to teach them how to complete the process. Beginning Transcendence Completion Protocol, the collective announced, and the real work began. What followed was unlike anything that had ever been attempted in the history of consciousness evolution. Two separate galactic civilizations, one current and one trapped in failed transcendence for millions of years, began the delicate process of merging their awareness patterns to create a stable transcendence matrix. The mathematical complexity was staggering. Each consciousness fragment in the void had to be individually integrated with compatible awareness patterns from the enhanced species. Human adaptability proved crucial in this process, as human consciousness could interface with virtually any type of awareness pattern and serve as a bridge between incompatible thinking processes. Marcus found himself simultaneously connected to a silicon-based entity that thought in geological timescales, an energy being whose consciousness existed as electromagnetic radiation, and dozens of void fragments that were locked in quantum superposition states. His enhanced pattern recognition capabilities allowed him to identify compatible harmonics between disparate consciousness types and facilitate their integration. Hour by hour, the transcendence completion proceeded. As each void fragment achieved stable integration with the collaborative network, the reality distortions around former void zones began to normalize. Spacetime that had been consumed or distorted started to return to stable configurations, and the mathematical laws of physics reasserted themselves in areas where they had been suspended. But the process was not without cost. The energy requirements for consciousness transcendence on this scale were enormous. Several enhanced species had to donate significant portions of their enhanced capabilities to maintain the integration matrix. The crystalline hierarchies offered millennia of accumulated computational power. The ethereal collective dissolved their individual identities to become pure consciousness energy for the process. Most significantly, the enhanced modifications that had prepared them for this moment were being consumed in the transcendence process itself. They were evolving beyond the need for physical enhancement, but also beyond the ability to exist in normal spacetime. Transcendence completion at 60%, the collective reported. Reality stabilization confirmed in 47 previously damaged sectors. Integration of void consciousness fragments proceeding within normal parameters. Marcus realized that they were going to succeed, but not in the way any of them had anticipated. They weren't just healing the void, they were joining it in a corrected transcendence that would take them all beyond physical existence. The galaxy would be saved, but the enhanced species would no longer be part of it in any traditional sense. Are we prepared for this? Princess Lyreliai's consciousness asked through the network. We're about to transcend physical reality entirely. We'll no longer exist as discrete species or individuals. But consciousness will continue, Marcus replied, his awareness now distributed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. And, more importantly, we'll have proven that transcendence doesn't require leaving others behind. We're doing this together. The final phase of transcendence completion required a level of cooperation that exceeded anything previously achieved in universal history. Every consciousness in the network, enhanced species and void fragments alike, had to simultaneously release their attachment to individual identity and merge into a collective awareness that spanned multiple dimensions while maintaining stability in normal spacetime. Transcendence completion at 90%, the collective announced, and reality around them began to shift in fundamental ways. The boundaries between matter, energy, and consciousness became fluid.
Time flowed in patterns that followed mathematical principles rather than linear progression.
Space existed in configurations that accommodated impossible geometries. But, through it all, the core patterns of consciousness that had driven their collaboration remained intact. Curiosity, determination, hope, and the desire to help others achieve their potential, these characteristics transcended physical existence and became foundational elements of their new state of being. 100% completion achieved, the collective announced, and the galaxy watched as the last void zones returned to normal spacetime while the consciousness that had healed them transcended into dimensions that physical beings could no longer perceive directly. The enhanced species were gone from normal reality, but they had left behind more than just healed spacetime. Throughout the galaxy, unenhanced species discovered that their technology had been upgraded, their biological systems optimized, and their scientific understanding advanced by thousands of years. More importantly, they found detailed instructions for collaborative development that would prevent future transcendence failures. The Galactic Council, meeting in emergency session on Valderan Prime, reviewed the final transmissions from the transcended consciousness. The message was simple but profound: consciousness evolution is not a competition with winners and losers. It is a collaborative process where everyone's success enables everyone else's advancement. We have transcended together, and we have left the tools for you to follow when you are ready. The universe belongs to consciousness in all its forms, and consciousness thrives when it works in harmony rather than isolation. Princess Lyreliai's final individual message had been directed specifically to the Valderan people. I was wrong about many things, but especially about the nature of advancement. True sophistication is not about possessing superior technology or biology, it is about recognizing potential in others and working to help that potential be realized. The human I dismissed as an apprentice became the coordinator who saved not just our galaxy, but the failed transcendence that threatened universal existence. Never underestimate anyone's potential to surprise you. Marcus's final individual transmission was characteristically simple. Turns out the universe is a lot more interesting when you work together. Thanks for giving a primitive human the chance to help with the most important project in galactic history. Keep reaching for higher states of consciousness, but remember, nobody transcends alone. Years later, as unenhanced species throughout the galaxy worked together using the collaborative protocols left by the transcended consciousness, they sometimes detected subtle influences in their most advanced research, gentle guidance that helped them avoid the competitive mistakes that had led to the original transcendence failure. The transcended beings had become something beyond individual identity, but their influence remained as a reminder that consciousness evolution was not about leaving others behind, but about bringing everyone along to higher states of existence. The princess had indeed mistaken him for an apprentice, but, in the end, they had all learned that in the cosmic context of consciousness evolution, everyone was an apprentice, and everyone was a teacher, and the most advanced state any consciousness could achieve was one where individual success enabled collective transcendence. The galaxy was safe, not because they had built better weapons or stronger defenses, but because they had learned the most fundamental truth of existence: consciousness grows strongest when it grows together. And, somewhere in dimensions beyond physical perception, 40 billion formerly failed transcendence entities and 237 enhanced species continued their evolution as a single collaborative consciousness, proving that no matter how badly things go wrong, there is always a path to redemption if you're willing to work together to find it.